Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Hint in the last video about things not being right and worries and things like that. And today I'm hoping that by doing this I turn it round. That's often a problem when you live on your own and you don't see people much, is this is all you've got. Yeah, it is what buzzes round in your own head. Now, I'm going to go round in a big circle. The bit in the middle probably won't sound very good. The bit at the end hopefully will pull us back again. But things I've said in the past. The learning never stops. Everybody's got to have a hobby. What else? When your hobby becomes work, perhaps you ought to think about changing your hobby. That's a good place to start. Getting worried yet? That's why I'm doing this. I'm worried and I need to go round the circle. Now what's happened over the last few months has been incredibly gradual, but a couple of comments by people, I'm not having a go, just brought things to bear, to make me sit down and think and not do. Just let's think things through. So the first thing that's to establish is everybody's got to have a hobby. What about when you've got 3 or 4? Can you still cope? Now I've always said my hobby is my orchids, my job is YouTube, because it earns me some money and helps me support all this lot. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to do it. That is a real bottom line. If I didn't have the YouTube support, I couldn't have all this. When I had to get out of my mum's place, which was free, all I had to do was pay the bills, no rent. Well, now I've got an excessive rent and still got the bills. So that's a necessity, that has to happen. So in that arena, what's changed then? Well, the environment's changed quite dramatically. This is a totally different place to grow orchids. And literally, as this season has progressed, I've realised that some things are not doing that well here, that used to do okay there. And I was expecting some things that didn't do well there to do better here. And to a degree that hasn't happened to any great extent. So part of that thinking was to try and pull this place to pieces and think, well, why isn't this working as well? And it's going to sound daft, but I think it's the light. It's the excessive light that these orchids are now getting. Bearing them in mind, a lot of them do come from tropical jungles and they've got an amazing leaf cover, canopy. And the sun very rarely penetrates down to the floor. It gets part way down and gets diffused and broken and eventually lost. And some orchids do come down, do grow in that area down there with at least the diffuse light. So have we got too much light? Now I sort of think, well, that's easy enough, we'll do some shading then. This isn't my structure. I can't insert anything into it. So any shading, I'd have to find a way of holding it up there without damaging the structure. And then we start talking about perhaps some serious expense. I could get a framework set up bigger than this, outside, 6 inches bigger all round with bars, and attach shade netting to that. I'd have a nice air gap as well to keep the heat out. I don't need to keep the heat out. There's another major change. I've lost my heat. And for a fair bit of the season, I was still treating this like the other place with a humidifier batting out and getting humidity up during the day when there was a bit of a temperature, not much, but when we had the sun halfway across the roof, I did get some reasonable heat. But that was short-lived. That period was 10 weeks long. The growing season is March, till at least the end of September and on into October, till the day lengths drop below 11 hours. So I didn't get the heat. You think, great, well the cooler growers should grow better then. Well, a couple did, but not all. You didn't get a massive improvement. I didn't lose as many. I could call that an improvement. So we've got a major change here, and quite honestly I can say it's still not right, and I'm not sure what else to do. I've taken control of the humidity and got that down to the point that we haven't got mould growing on everything, the structure, the roof, you know, the shelves, all that, that's all stopped now. So that was the humidity combined with the lower temperature. Analysed, sorted out, defined, solved. Great. So that's that bit done. Now what I could do is I could actually say, well, when I get to the growing season I am going to raise my daytime temperature artificially if I have to, which means heat, which means money and expense. Now obviously I wouldn't take it up to the extremes of heat I used to get in the other place artificially. The heat would be on all flipping day. But yeah, I could possibly think about next season raising the daytime temperatures when it doesn't do it naturally. But like I say, that's a considerable expense that I'd have to think about. Now when I start thinking about expenses I start worrying. Everything now costs more. I was just having a look through my home shop at items that I've been buying a very long time, and some of those are now half as much again. An item that always used to be 180 is now 240. Yeah, everything is costing more, and a lot of that is the transport that goes into moving stuff around. And perhaps as a country we ought to think about doing a lot more here and sacrificing some of the things that have got huge mileage involved, like bananas. You have to have, but I don't eat bananas. I don't mind them, so I don't dislike them. I don't buy them. I don't buy them because of the sheer cost. And if at that price they've come from wherever, Africa, or I don't even know where they're grown actually, whatever, then there's a huge transport cost. And if they can still sell them at that price, then the people back there growing them ain't getting paid much, are they? So anyway, that's diversifying. What do we do about this place? Hobby number one then, orchids. Now is where we possibly get into the problems. Hobby number two is my bonsai. Now that's not a hobby that uses up huge amounts of time. There are periods when time is required. You know, wiring a large tree, you know, is a day or two's work possibly. That's a day or two out of the year. It's not a big deal, is it? But then everything's outside. Weather to contend with? No, not really. I've got a couple of trees that would be better if they didn't get soaking wet and cold during the winter, which is easy enough to deal with. Polythene bag over the pot. It's not, you know, not rocket science. So my other hobby, my bonsai, can give me quite a bit of enjoyment for much, much less input than this one. And somebody said, I can see what you're doing. You're going to end up, your bonsai is going to be your main hobby and your orchids are going to fade away. I've seen enough people on YouTube do it, you know. I've seen people go from growing orchids, orchid videos, gradually introducing carnivorous plants, to switching over to carnivorous plants to such an extent that when they do an orchid video, they can't even remember their names. Yeah? I've seen people go from orchids to aquariums. I've seen people go the other way, you know, and come into orchids from something else. Things change round. But in the main, a lot of people have just got the one hobby. So I've now mentioned a second one. And I know that this coming growing season, I'm going to get a lot of enjoyment out of my trees. A lot. But I can't yet. Why can't I? Well, some of them aren't in bonsai pots. Well, okay, we repot them in the spring at the appropriate time. It's a one-off, it's not a big deal. but to make them look nice and be presented so that when I look out of the window I think, that's nice, I need the staging done. That's a big job, and it's not a job using skills that I've got. I can, I wouldn't say I'm good at it, I can do it. But initially I've got quite a big expense because I've got to go and get the large, well, I'll call them planks of wood, what will be the shelving. I've got the legs, I've got the screws, I've got the workbench to hold things while I'm sawing. I've got bought a decent saw, proper wood saw. So I've got all the stuff I need, I've just got to go and get that timber. And I need to do that, and then once I've put it all together I'm going to coat it up with some, weatherproof stain and make everything look nice, and then the trees can be presented. And I know that end result's going to look good, but I've got to do it. And I can't get started. And I don't know what's stopping me. The drive to go and get that timber is 9 miles. No, from here it'll be about 11. It's 11 miles, it's just up the road, it's less than half an hour away. And it's also on a road I use regular, although it's a town I bypass, because there is a bypass, I'll have to go in. It's not a big deal. The wood is for sale on eBay. I've decided I'm not buying it on eBay because it's just up the road, I'll go and get it. But I don't think just turning up's a good idea. I need to phone them to say, is it all right to just come and get it and pay you when I get there, as they've advertised it on eBay. So why haven't I done it yet? I can't get round to doing that phone call. Why? What's stopping me doing that? Something is niggling and stopping me doing that phone call. Now, okay, I'm going to have to put the seats down in the car. That means getting in the back and going click, 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 push. I can do it as fast as I said it. And then the timber will go in the back of the car, and the back of the boot trunk thing in different countries will close, and the wood won't fall out all over the road behind me. What's stopping me doing that? It's because the phone call starts a set of events, a couple of which I'm not looking forward to. So that's what I think's doing it. So that if I don't do the phone call, I don't get to those events, do I? Because I haven't got the timber. I can't make the staging. So when I make the phone call, I've started the process. I'm sort of reluctant to get going, and it's difficult to work out why. Apart from the fact that making the shelving, the staging, is quite heavy duty work. You know, those legs are pretty heavy. I carried them from the front, out of the skip, from next door, round to here. And I was tired out. There's only 4 pieces of wood, but they weigh an awful lot. And they were difficult to get round here because the easiest way to carry a piece of wood is like that. Yeah? I had to carry them like that because that alleyway is so narrow. So I had to carry them that way. I couldn't carry them this way because they were too heavy. If I could have carried them in one hand, it would have been okay, they're far too heavy for that. So there's some pretty heavy physical work to do. And once I put it all together and everything, coating it up with the stain, that little bit I'm quite looking forward to because it's the finishing touch for a product. And when that's done, I can stand back and go, yay. But I'm having trouble getting there. So that's that. And then, as you've seen in the videos, we've started to attack the garden. Now, I don't want looking after this garden to be work. I want it to be a pleasure and enjoyable, and be able to stand back and go, right, that bit looks okay now. But this is hard work. There is elements of difficulty in there that I'm not looking forward to because there's height involved, that I've either got to struggle from the ground or stand on the steps. And climbing up the steps when the steps are on uneven ground is downright dangerous, and I haven't got anybody here to stand on the bottom of the steps. So getting the rest of that done, I'm not looking forward to. But it's got to be done, so it's work. It's work I don't want to do. Now I've done 2 sessions. There's actually 4 sessions there. There were 2 hacking sessions and 2 clearing up sessions to get everything in the pile. That pile's going to sit there till Hannah comes down, because it's very, very difficult to hold plastic bags open and put greenery in them when you've only got 2 of these. It needs 2 of these to hold the bag and hold it open, and another 2 of these to pick the stuff up and put it in. Now when Hannah comes down, we've only got Saturday, because the Sunday is the Orchid show. So we've only got Saturday, and we don't normally get down here till about 11, 12 in the morning, and then we have some lunch, and you know, it doesn't leave a lot of time. I don't think it'll take long, but you know, it could be chucking it down with rain and it doesn't get done, and I'll have to wait for the next time she comes down. Problems, but you know, so the clearing up bit is, I don't want to do it, but it's got to be done. Can't just leave it there forever, can I? Lots of people have suggested composting. What would I do with the compost? There's no garden here to put it on. Everything is covered in, if you see what I mean. There's no bare areas that you plant things in and put compost around them. I haven't got any of that. So it would be a waste of time. I'd end up producing something that I wouldn't use. So we won't be doing that. So that's off the list. So we've now got the orchids, we've got YouTube. We've now got YouTube ×2, because I've got my bonsai video channel and my orchid video channel, but I still see that as one because it's the same camera, it's the same tripod, it's the same laptop, it's the same software. I don't see those as separate things. So where have we got to then? We've got the orchids, we've got the bonsai, we've got YouTube, we've got the garden. All those things are now, I'd like to think of them all as hobbies, but at the moment there's large elements of work involved, and for a while now I've enjoyed doing the videos more than I've enjoyed looking after the orchids. Now that's a dramatic mindset change. So I've opened that door and treated what's out here as a chore, work, and I've treated taking the camera back in there and doing all that stuff as pleasure. Switched over. Now, this is not a good thing. We've got to get out of that. If all this is going to carry on, I need to get my mindset back the other way. And for once, I don't think coffee's going to solve it, because it's this, not this. This can run away on its own. It's sort of self-propelled weaponry. You know, it's what goes on in here buzzes around. And then I thought, well, there's an easy answer to that, is downsize. Get rid of some of the stuff that either isn't growing very well or you've lost interest in. And then I thought, well, it's wasteful. How do I get rid of it? And you sort of think, well, surely you could just take the plants to the Orchid Society, and if the worst comes to the worst, stick them in the raffle. Okay, I don't get anything for them, but it gets them off my plate and reduces what has now become a workload. That's got to be fixed. But there are quite a few things in here that would get scrapped because they're not in a fit state to give to somebody else. There's also some things in here that are actually growing quite well that I just don't like that much. I can give you a good example of that. We've got to have a look at some plants, haven't we? I was looking at it this morning. Now, this is a plant that's never bloomed before. It's not growing as well as it should, but I know how to fix it. This is an epidendrum. Is it an epidendrum? Yeah, I think so. Oh, well, it doesn't matter what it is. It's coming into bloom for the first time. What do you think those blooms are going to look like? I can tell you now they will be a pale colour, looking at the buds, and they're going to be tiny. And I've waited all that time for that. Now this plant would do better in a pot. It suffers from what I call new root syndrome, where it pushes out lovely fleshy roots, but they won't hydrate without soaking. And the answer to that is a pot. We're already getting to the stage where the shelves with the pots on are pretty full. That's on a mount at the moment. But that's an example of a plant that somebody else might like a go at that I've just had enough of. I almost begrudge watering it, which I've just done this morning. I don't normally have to water on a Sunday, I avoid it, but it just happened to come round that way. So there's a plant. I mean, I've been fiddling with these. These are Dendrobium lodigesii kikis. The mother plant went to somebody else and I kept the kikis, and I thought, that's all right, I'll grow them on and have a nice new plant. 2 years. It's going in the bin now. Now that I've picked it up and looked at it properly, it's going out. That's 4 plants this week that have gone out. Another thing that went out this morning was another Tulumnia. They're just rotting, they're not doing very good. And I know what's wrong with them. They've lost their heat. They come from the Caribbean. You know, people go from the UK to the Caribbean to get some sunshine and some warmth and a nice holiday. And mine are having a holiday in a cold place at the moment. So that's a genus that's just not doing well. So I haven't got many left. At one point I had 14 or 15 Tulumnias. I think I've got 4 now, or 5. They've gradually dwindled to what's left. And what's left is not healthy, strong plants. They're not growing well at all. So that's that. And then there's another one this morning, and this was a gift as well, which is really annoying. This plant has just collapsed, and this is a Cattleya. It's actually a Sophronitis originally, but it's renamed as a Cattleya. Now, okay, it's got some new growths coming, but one of them's already rotted. That's gone. So that's one new growth lost. The other one's looking pale, and this one down here might make it. But I've lost 4 or 5 bulbs that have rotted. Now this is a cooler growing type Cattleya. This is not a high heat plant. So what's going wrong with it? What's going wrong with it? It wasn't doing bad around the other place. But again, another plant that's just going down for no apparent reason. These are difficult to run with, you know, if you see what I mean, because I can't give an answer. And then we go back to the other thing that I said. The learning never stops. Now, this is important as well. Now, I'll emphasise that. The learning never stops. But it does that. And when it's doing this, the amount of new stuff that you take in is very little. It's next to nothing. The odd snippet comes in. So your learning curve has dropped right off. And part of the enjoyment is that learning. You know, getting information from others, watching other people's videos, you know, reading books if that's the sort of thing you like to do. Actual experience of growing plants and changing something perhaps and seeing a good result and thinking, right, that worked for me in my environment, that works, that's knowledge. Yeah? And then you get to the point where it virtually stops. Is that why some of the enjoyment's gone? Because the learning has slowed right down to next to nothing. So how do we change that then? Change the plants. Yeah? Get some different stuff in. And I've had a think, and in this environment there's not many more genera that I could think about growing that I could actually get hold of. That's the other thing in the UK. You can't get hold of stuff. You can't get stuff out of Europe anymore, out of the EU, because we ain't in the club anymore. May or may not have been a good idea, but that wasn't. Whether I said yes or no is irrelevant to the result, quite honestly. The result happened. Stuck with it one way or the other. Now, there are some things I've said, oh, I don't grow them, like I had a cymbidium. I don't grow those, I've just got one that I'm obliged to keep. Because it's a friend of Hannah's who died and the plant was given to Hannah as a memory. She couldn't look after it. Dad, can you look after it? Yes, I'll look after it for you. Now I've got 3. They're taking up a shelf all on their own. But they'll go outside in the summer because if I can get it off the shelf without knocking everything over, I will try. I'm not going to put it back, but if I can get it out without knocking things over, I will. Now this is heavy because it got watered yesterday and this desperately needs repotting. So it's holding a lot more water than it should be. It's not draining through as well as it should. But this is that Cattleya. And basically, let's find my camera. This is the bulb it grew last year. Now that was in the grow room round the other place. It didn't get put outside. That's pathetic. This is the bulb it grew this year being outside. It's massive. It's bigger than any of the previous bulbs. It's got a massive flower spike coming on it and it's already started either a second flower spike or its next new growth round the side here. So I can grow these. They seem to be doing okay, but boy do they take up a lot of space. They don't take a lot of looking after, honestly. What I've been doing with those is every time I water the bonsai, because I'm outside, or the garden tubs or anything, I throw some water on the 2 cymbidiums that were outside at the time. And they seem to have grown well. You know? I mean, this is the other one that's been outside, and that's grown this new growth, which is a good one. It's matured this bulb, it's now got a flower spike coming. It's doing okay. So I can grow these, they just take up a lot of space. Can I put up with that? Bearing in mind they have to come in here for the winter, they've got to have shelter for the winter, so they'd have to come in here. How could I accommodate more of those? Well, make more room. How do I make more room? Get rid of some plants. Keep circling round to keeping plants that are rescues for no other reason than I feel as though I ought to. And is that a good enough reason? Seriously, is that a good enough reason to keep rescuing plants that take up space where other things that grow well could be? Yeah? Now some plants I've got, for one reason or another, often excessive heat at the other place took them down. They're struggling to recover, they're taking it up. Why don't they go in the bin and get replaced when the opportunity comes along with a nice, strong, healthy version? So that gradually the collection changes. Stuff gets let go, new stuff comes in. Not at a great rate of knots. This would happen over quite a long period of time. But then you get the enjoyment of new plants, often that need repotting straight away. Now believe it or not, I'm one of those daft people who actually quite enjoy repotting. What I don't enjoy is taking a new plant out of a pot and find the roots rotten. So you've now got a plant that you're going to have to recover and you've only just bought it. And sometimes they never recover properly. And you do all the work and all the sort of effort over a couple of years and you still haven't got a good plant. So, you know, are they worth it? This is the bottom line. Now, somebody watched an old video and put a comment on it. I had to go and have a look at it to see what it was all about. But it was one of the first zygopetalums I ever bought, and I was repotting it. And the comment said, "Have you still got it?" And at the time I actually laughed out loud. I did the genuine lol, laugh out loud. No, all my earlier zygopetalums died. And eventually I got the knowledge from somebody else, thank you very much, to work out what I was doing wrong. So now I get zygopetalums like that, with 2 spikes coming out of the same new growth. It'll be in bloom in the not too distant future, then we can find out which one it is. Yeah, so, you know, I've got my head round zygos now. They don't die. And even real tatty looking plants seem to hang in there and pull on. So, you know, chop and change. Now, it'll be a couple of years ago now, but I tried a new genus. I thought, what should we do? We've got heat. Up near the roof, this is the old place again, mindset. Up near the roof, I've got pretty good light. Let's have a go at Rhinanthus. It's growing okay. Hasn't flowered. None of them have. I've had 4. 1 rotted and died relatively quickly. It wasn't a good one when I got it. 2 of the others have sort of grown on. I mean, that one's growing on okay. It keeps producing new leaves. It's grown some roots. Doesn't hydrate very well, these roots sticking out. Not the end off of that one. Again, the white root syndrome. And now that I haven't got a Vander bucket, they can't go in for a soak. But what these have lost is their heat. They've now got better light than they had around the other place. Again, that's growing okay. It's all right. It's never bloomed. Do I need to carry on growing Rhinanthus? Never bloomed. Had them a couple of years now. And certainly, from what I've heard, they could be blooming size. Maybe they're not. Maybe that is the problem. But then we've got another one that's about to go. This drops as many leaves as it grows. It will not get any bigger. So we've got a new leaf coming and we've got one about to fall off. Not today, still attached, but it's going to go. This one just won't grow. It just won't gain mass. Well, it's never going to bloom with that amount of leaf cover. It's just not going to work. So 2 out of 3 are doing okay, but they haven't bloomed. So was that a good idea, getting these in? Well, it might have been a good idea at the time, but it doesn't seem to have worked, does it? So, but all I'm doing is going round thinking, should I get rid of plants? Should I downsize? Should I reduce the effort out here? Now, yesterday I watered everything in a pot, basically, except the cooler, shadier set, which got done the day before. And that included the Phalaenopsis on the kitchen window and included Derek's plants. So that was literally everything except the cooler, shadier set. Took me 2.5 hours minus breaks. Because what I do is I do a few shelves and then I sort of think, I'm getting a bit tired of the tedium of the repetition. We'll have a coffee break and we'll update the notes of those I've done so far, and you know, any that I've taken blooms off, you know, take them out of bloom. Any new ones that I've spotted in bud, update the notes in bud, that sort of thing. And then I'd have a coffee, have a break, and then come back in and do another couple. So it didn't take that long, really, did it? I'm going to sneeze, I think. Maybe, maybe not. Sneezes are funny things, aren't they? Especially when they creep up on you suddenly and you're in a public place, you know. So nothing makes heads turns more than a really good rachu. Trouble is, they all know exactly who it was. It's a directional thing. The sound travels exactly. You can go back to where that sound came from. Yeah, so it didn't actually take me that long. And I have to do that every 8 to 10 days. Where's the chore in that? That is not hard work. Around the other place, you know, the frequency was greater because of the heat. Even at this time of year, you know, if the sun hit the glass, I'd have heat. Heat, speeds up the process of the transpiration of the plants. They use up the water faster. And I think to a degree that's part of why things haven't been doing so well, perhaps, is that things have been staying wet a bit longer than perhaps they ought to because of the lack of heat. So what do? Well, you adjust your watering frequency. That doesn't always solve it. Sometimes the media is just wrong for those lower temperatures. Well, change the media then. Well, have I had long enough to find out which is a better media? It's difficult. I've got some things that are growing incredibly well in here. For instance, let's have a black hair type. Out of the dendrobiums, these don't work for me. I was just going to say, I'll find one to prove the point. There's one where I just put those Lodogesi, there's already one in there that's going out. This one I think is going to follow it. It's lost its leaves on that cane, it's lost half its leaves on that cane and its growing point, and the new growth down here has completely failed. It's dying. It's probably not going to make it. Black hair type. I don't do well with black hair types, but then you have to say that that's a black hair type. That's its latest growth, along with this one over here. It's doing fine. There's new roots piling out from the base of those new growths. So why is that one doing well and others don't? Well, we've always said some things are more fussy than others and need to be closer to their comfort zone, whereas some are more adaptable and will still do okay without being as close to their comfort zone. So all I can say, based on the experience I've had, is that there's quite a few more black hair type dendrobiums that are fussy compared with other types. That's a deduction. It is based on experience, yeah, but I don't know. These are warm growers. In theory they shouldn't do that well in the winter in here, but then they'll get kept almost dry through the winter, and if they come out the other end, then that one, you know, well, as I said, there's one on the floor right next to me. I could have picked this one up, couldn't I? Oof. This is a black hair type, right? Starting at the top, down to the pot. This is the latest growth. Still growing strong. This was the last growth. Grew well and bloomed. Looks like it's got another bud coming as well. So that one's doing fine. So now you could say, perhaps you've just identified why some do and some don't. That is the tray that was in. That's not funny. We don't want them in here. Now I hope that came in on one of the Cymbidiums and hasn't actually got in here. So you have to bear in mind sometimes a slug will hitch a ride on a cat. I've seen that actually happen, especially when they get out in the undergrowth. Anyway, so given the first black hair type I showed you, and the second and that last one that I showed you, what's the difference? The difference is the last two that are growing really well are big ones. And all the others that I've lost are much smaller growing plants. That's a hybrid, that's a species, and the two I've just said that have, you know, because that one, that's not going to last into the end of next week, I doubt. Those were species. but that's a species and that's growing well. So it's down at plant level. It's down at plant level. Some plants do okay, and if they've lasted since last December to now and are showing good growth and strength and vigour, then they go on the stay list. And if they don't come into that category, should they go on the to-go list? Now, in the past, the to-go plants often got bundled up and posted off to people. I can't post to the EU anymore. The only country I can post to is the UK. And that limits, because you know the number of viewers in the UK, that also might want some of my plants, bearing in mind you're probably going to get some scale. It's not going to happen, is it? I wouldn't knowingly give somebody a plant that I could see scale on, or had scale in the not too distant past, in which case there could still be some there even if I couldn't see any. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't infect somebody else's collection. So what do? Do we try and struggle on with what we're doing, or do we downsize to the plants that I get more enjoyment out of, analysing why am I getting the enjoyment out of those plants? It's because they grow well for me and bloom, and I like the blooms. Put those three together and I've got a set of plants, probably in most of the genera that I've got, that are okay. And then there's those that aren't. Now, I suppose I could say I'm lucky, but Insa, when he moved house, he lost a lot of his collection. So he downsized, you know, without trying. And I suspect he lost some of his precious plants, so it's not funny. I'm not making fun of it. But I didn't lose anything when I moved house. So I ended up keeping the flipping lot. But we need to do something, because I'm not comfortable out here anymore. That's got to change, otherwise I will lose the interest. So you know, we need to get that interest back again. And I think it's geared up to keeping the plants that I'm getting the enjoyment from because they try hard and succeed. You know, there's some that have tried hard for years and still haven't really been successful. They're still weak, feeble plants and won't grow. Looking through Derek's plants, they were all weak and feeble. Most were rootless and tiny. They were feeble plants. And as I was watering those, out of the ones that have made it, they've all got strong new growths and are pushing out some roots. Now, there's some very rare hybrids in amongst that collection. Crosses that were done prior to the modern techniques. So somebody got two plants or two hybrids or whatever, crossed them manually, got the seed pod, dried the seed pod out, sowed them in, you know, the sterile conditions in flasks and grew them on the old-fashioned way. And when you look back at those old-fashioned plants like that, you haven't got a great success rate for a start. So you've got a limited number of plants from that one-off exercise, and then you think, well, if that was done in like the early 1900s or even the 1930s, 1940s, and then you stop and think, how many of those plants are still alive? So some of those plants are rare. So I think I'm going to downsize. Now, I won't make a major decision like that without talking it over with Hannah and see what she thinks. Now, she'll immediately go into worry and think that her plants down here are part of why I'm making this decision. No, they're not. There's 5 Phalaenopsis that Hannah left down here that she may take back. Although she's doing so much work at the moment, I suspect they would get a bit neglected. But Phalaenopsis can take a bit of neglect, you know, it's not too bad. But they're not causing me a problem. They're in the kitchen, they're on the windowsill with my Phalaenopsis, they're all out there together. So I think the downsizing is part of the solution. Getting my staging finished for the bonsai collection is part of the solution. Getting this heavy work finished and cleared up and got rid of is part of the solution. Now you see the problem. I've just said what the problem is. I've got too much on the go at the same time. Now that's more coincidence than anything. So how can we get rid of the need for some of that? Well, I've started the garden. Now I don't have to finish it. I do need to finish that because I've got, where I've chopped all the wisteria off, it's dying back now. So it looks awful. So I do have to finish that side and clear up. But do I have to take on the bottom of the garden yet? And the simple answer is no, I don't. That can wait till spring if necessary. Yeah? The only thing I would say is it probably needs to be done before my next house inspection. But again, if that's all that was going to be done, and Hannah was down for the weekend, she could stand on the bottom of the steps and we could knock that out between us pretty quick. So, I think the answer is to get rid of the fact that all of these things need doing at once. So we will do the downsizing once I've had a chat with Hannah, and she also thinks it's a good idea. 'Cause she may put up reasons that I haven't thought of that make it not a good idea. But that's plan number one. That reduces the workload out here, brings back a fair bit of the enjoyment as well, because I'll be picking up plants that are doing okay. Oh, look at those new growths, look at all those roots, yay! Rather than, are you going to make it or not? You know, all that sort of stuff. So get the staging done for the bonsai. Ah, now my battery's going to go. I shall have to cut off. I'll come back for a couple of minutes. Right, sorry about that. That also meant that I've checked the screen and we're nearly up to 50 minutes, so we need to cut this off. People are not going to watch that. It's too much. Right, so, and another thing I forgot to even include on the load is the Orchid Society. I'm treasurer. There are compulsory things that have to be done at certain times. I can't get out of them. So they become work. Yeah? I mean, when I go to the show, I'm going to have to spend some time on the door, taking the money, you know, all that sort of stuff. I don't really want to do that. I'd rather enjoy the show, but if there isn't a treasurer, we haven't got a society. It's the only reason I took the job, is because the other person left from a temporary post and said I'm not doing it anymore, so we didn't have one. There's that as well. And the committee, as part of that, I don't mind doing that because the committee meetings precede a normal meeting, which I'd be going to anyway, and they're enjoyable. Yeah, so that isn't work, but a fair bit of the treasurer stuff is. So there's that, but they're little snippets of work every now and again. They don't tie me down, but they do have to be done. So there's that. It's another workload. Yeah, so I think summing up, we're not in a happy place. We've got too much buzzing on, too many things that have been started and aren't finished, and are spoiling my enjoyment of getting up for the day, if you see what I mean. You know, I sit down for my first coffee in the morning and do my comments, and I enjoy doing that. There's not much else to do that time of day, it's pitch dark. Feed the cats and all that sort of stuff. But then the daylight comes and you start thinking about, right, what am I going to do today? And the list of things outstanding, there's a fair few of them I just don't want to do, so they don't get done. There's some things haven't been started that should be, so we've got to do something. I think I need to get on with that staging and do it, get on with it. I've just watered all of my pots yesterday, and today I've watered my mounts. I've now got 2 or 3 days where I don't need to do anything in here. Is that not a good time to go and get that wood? Phone up Monday morning, make the arrangements if that's okay to do. If not, go on eBay, buy it on eBay, then go and get it. They won't deliver it, got to go and get it. Get that wood back here. Get the pieces of wood cut to size. That would probably be enough for a day because of the heavy bit involved with that. Plus my workbench that I need to hold the timber to cut it and drill the holes in hasn't even been put together yet, still in the box. I could do that this afternoon, couldn't I? Seems I've nearly finished out here. So get that bonsai staging done, get it finished, get it out of the way. Then that's done. It's a one-off, never need to be done again. Get it done, cross it off the list. Because I'm looking at it all the time. I'm looking at the trees on the ground. I'm looking at them on tatty, standing on chairs and things. You know, I'm looking at the wood outside the window. It's just there, staring me in the face, not done. So let's get that knocked out then. That'll be one job done. And then I may try and start clearing up this mess and getting it in bags. And I might find that it's actually manageable. But it will be so much easier to do it with Hannah. So have a think about that. Hannah's down in the not too distant future. It's only a couple of weekends away. And as far as out here is concerned, is just remove the plants that I'm not happy with, that don't do well. There will be a few struggling plants that get kept for either sentimental reasons or rarity reasons or a memory of where I got them from or something like that. So there might be a few tatty ones still left, but let's get this grow room full of fit as butcher's dogs plants that are doing okay. That will bring that enjoyment back, I'm sure. Right, so that's it for today. Thanks for my subscribers and all that sort of stuff. If you're not subscribed, it would be awfully nice if you did so. And a real big thank you to the patrons that are hanging in there. I mean, a few are dropping out as time goes on, and a few new ones are coming in. It's relatively steady, and that income adds into the pot for all of this to be able to continue. So it is greatly appreciated. Don't get me wrong, it is greatly appreciated, especially when times are hard like they are now. So thanks for all that. And thanks for those that went across to the Bonsai channel and subscribed over there as well. If you haven't done that yet, that would also be nice to do. The link's in the description. If not, it's pretty easy to find. Just get on YouTube and type in Roger's Bonsai, you'll find it. So that's that. And yeah, just thanks for being around, quite honestly. There is an element of, although I can't see any of you, I know hardly any of you, but you're like friends, if you see what I mean. Okay, it's online friends, but nonetheless, I get up in the morning, turn the laptop on, and there you are, in the comments section. Either asking questions or saying thanks for the video, or you're there. It's part of the whole thing. And that is enjoyment, that is enjoyable. So, right, we'll leave it at that today. This has gone on far too long. We haven't looked at many orchids, have we? But I mean, you know, this is a plant that causes me difficulties now that I haven't got my Vanda bucket, but there's no way I'm going to get rid of it. And that's my, you know, my big blue Vanda. I'm not getting rid of that with blooms like that. You know, that grows well, pushes out multiple new leaves. But it is a pain to water now. What I do now is when I water my mounts, they get watered, you know, in the way that I water. But now that I haven't got the Vanda bucket, I can't put the Vandas into soak. So what I do is, when I finish watering the mounts, I put the water that's left in the sprayer and take them outside and give them a good spray and a good soak. So they do still get watered. They could probably do with that a bit more frequently, but they're okay with that this time of year. So, you know. So I think we need to have a sort out and just get rid of some of this dross in here that just doesn't grow well. And if there's a plant that actually doesn't grow bad, that is just one I don't really want anymore, I can think of a couple of people that I can ask if they want it. So rather than just bin it, you know, so some may go to other people. People that I see, this is the thing. I mean, there's a guy that's already had some of my plants that lives down well, on the way to Burnham's basically, that's easy to meet up with and just hand the plants over. So some could go there if they were wanted. I doubt if Lynn would want any. She's rather got enough of her own. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the waffle, and I hope I've brought that round full circle. Started off analysing where I think problems are in here, things are not working, they make my days uncomfortable, you know. More detail, and bring it back round, and some possible solutions. Full circle. We often do that on the Sunday chats. We go round a subject and come back to the beginning. So see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.